We begin in London, where UK Prime Minister Theresa May has just issued a statement out of Downing Street on the security in the country. That comes in the wake of Saturday's terror attacks. The Prime Minister says there will be more police on the streets this week ahead of Thursday's elections and that they have been given more powers. She's also once again thanked the security forces for their swift response to Saturday's attack. Meanwhile, ISIL has claimed responsibility for Saturday's night's attack, which left 7 people dead and scores others injured. 3 attackers rammed a van into pedestrians on London Bridge and stabbed others nearby before police shot them dead. ISIL had sent out a call on messaging service Telegram earlier on Saturday. The message urged followers to carry out attacks with trucks, knives and guns against so-called crusaders during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. ISIL has been losing territory in Syria and Iraq to coalition forces backed by the United States. The London attack is the 3rd militant assault in Britain in less than 3 months. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei has more.
More than 30 hours have passed since the devastating attack, with the manhunt having been a relentless search. Day and night, the investigation of the ISIL-linked terror attack has continued, with police working tirelessly to find out more on what happened in London. 3 attackers were shot dead by police and 12 others were arrested. Among the 12, 7 are women, while a man was later released without charge.
Since the emergence of
In response to the tragedy, British Prime Minister Theresa May vowed to clamp down on security in the wake of the terror attacks that have hit the UK.
But it is time to say enough is enough. Everybody needs to go about their lives as they normally would.
We're safe now. Safe.
Even for those who managed to escape the horrific events, things are not easy as they continue to recover from the haunting scenes.
They don't care, just stand up there. The police was in front and they was stand up. Let's do it, just do it.
Surrendered, they submitted.
No.
They fought the police?
Yeah.
On Saturday night, a van drove onto London Bridge, mounting the sidewalk and slammed into pedestrians. Armed with knives, the preparators then drove towards Borough Market and got out of the vehicle and proceeded to stab several people.
And a man ran up to him and said, "This is for my family, for Islam." Looked him straight in the face and stabbed him.
Police and ambulances were called and were on the scene about 10 minutes after the attack.
A policeman was trying to put himself between these attackers and the rest of the people, trying to scare them.
8 armed officers fired 50 bullets and shot dead the attackers. A bystander was also shot during the operation. By Sunday, 36 people remain in hospital and 21 of those are in critical condition. The attack comes 12 days after a suicide bombing in Manchester and just days ahead of Britain's general election. But the UK is not raising its security level. Some have called out that terrorism is beginning to feel like a new normal to the British people, with this attack the 3rd in as many months. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN.
Well, let's get you a quick update on those developments. I'm joined live from London by Richard Bestick. Richard, what more do we know about the attackers, though? What's the latest?
Well, Beatrice, the police in London say they now believe they have the identity of all 3 attackers. And very recently, in a statement that you were referring to earlier, the UK Prime Minister Theresa May said later in the day the identities of the 3, the names of the 3 will be released. The security sweep in the wake of the attack continues with overnight further raids in the East End of London with an unspecified number of arrests. Police say that their priority at the moment is to find out more about the attackers and what support network they might have had. It's a fast-moving investigation involving all elements of the UK security forces. To date, as you heard in that report there, 36 people remain in hospital following the attack, 20 of them critically ill. Beatrice.
Well, Richard, the security sweep continues in London there, and Theresa May has spoken about the security situation and maintained that Thursday's election will go ahead. So has London returned to normal now? What about the police presence in the city at the moment?
Well, some elements of life here in London is returning. Let me show you something here, Beatrice. This is London Bridge, which has actually reopened to pedestrian traffic. There's no cars or buses or commercial vehicles on it, but to that extent it has returned to some kind of normality. There does, though, remain a increased presence of armed police on the streets, and it was this increased presence which Mayor Sadiq Khan was talking about when he urged Londoners not to be alarmed, prompting the US President Donald Trump to tweet his criticisms of the London mayor, creating that furore between the US and the UK capital. Yes, it is coming back to normal. Clearly, there are elements of life in London which are very not normal, abnormal. There will be a minute's silence later at 11 o'clock local time, and a vigil at the end of the day to remember those 7 people who died and all those many people who were injured. So yes, some aspects of London has to carry on, but certainly I wouldn't call it a normal atmosphere here at all. Beatrice?
Well, Richard, arrests have been made now. So what do we know about the demographics of the area where the arrests have been made?
It's interesting. The area of the attack was near the financial centre of London. At the time of the attack, the bars and restaurants in the area were full with young people on a Saturday night out. Let me show you something else here. Towering over the entire area, of course, the Shard, which dominates the area. It's now a familiar part of the London cityscope, owned, of course, by the Qatari government. The raids and arrests have all taken place in the East End of London, still in large part blue-collar areas with high Muslim populations. So the two areas then, Beatrice, quite different, but linked in a way by this terrible outrage.
Well, Richard, on Sunday, though, Theresa May in her address said that there will be awkward conversations on extremism. Do we know what she meant by that? What does she mean by that exactly?
The Prime Minister chaired another meeting of security chiefs and her most senior ministers this morning. And later we anticipate she'll be following up on that statement she made with a speech, in which we'll be anticipating she'll put some flesh on her comments made in Downing Street yesterday. She said things have got to change. She said enough is enough. Putting that into context, the outrage has come at a time when Britain is involved in campaigning for a general election. The campaign was briefly suspended, but voters will be going to the polls on Thursday, which brings all its own levels of security implications. But security and how to tackle these random, low-tech terrorist attacks clearly now will become centre stage of the entire election debate. It'll be intriguing to get a little bit more detail from the Prime Minister on what she plans to do, and of course there will be a rapid reaction from all the other parties contesting the UK election. Beatrice.
All right, Richard, best stick for us with an update from London. Meanwhile, an eyewitness to the London attack filmed some scenes from inside Barrow Market on Saturday night, immediately after police closed in on the attackers. Gabriele Ciotti is an Italian freelance photographer living in London. He was on the way home when he saw armed police officers gathered near the London Bridge underground station. Ciotti took one of the first photos of one of the suspected attackers lying on the ground after being shot by the police. Afterwards, he watched the police operation play out for about 10 minutes. Earlier, CGTN spoke to Douglas Smith, a former Assistant Secretary in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's given us more insight into the challenges British Prime Minister Theresa May faces after the London terror attack, as well as some of the steps she may need to take.
It's a really big challenge the Prime Minister faces. I think an important thing is to take one step back and to remember what her job was previous to being Prime Minister, and that was the Home Secretary. the equivalent of the DHS secretary here in the United States. So she had a lot of experience in this space, particularly leading into the London Olympics, really looking where the stadium was getting built, which was in a predominantly Muslim neighborhood. So she has spent a lot of time and energy over the years thinking this through. I do think her points about the internet are an important one. We were seeing it is so easy for anyone just to look at the internet, get inspired by something, and go off to do it. As your correspondent just talked about, it doesn't take much. You don't need a machine gun, you don't need a bomb, you just need a truck and the will to wreak havoc. So I think what England's going to have to do is do a lot of what they did coming out of the challenges with the IRA all those years ago, is just have the population, if you see something, say something. And they're a strong and resilient people. I think they'll continue to push back, but these challenges will arise. Right. I mean, I think it's the same challenge we're facing in the United States, as we saw in the horrible massacre in Charleston, South Carolina, that we saw in the school shootings. When people become feeling like they're an outcast, they'll lash out. I don't think it's a problem solely for the British. It's really a world problem. I think today President Trump spent a lot of energy going after and attacking the mayor of London. For what reason, I really don't know. The challenge is really trying to get all of society to feel a part of it. Much like Dylan Wolf, the antagonist in the South Carolina murder, felt he had to lash out against the peaceful people. It's the same situation that the Prime Minister May is having to face. And I think the only thing that you can do is continue to look for ways to reach into the community. The Islamic imams in London today put out a very powerful statement, talking about standing one and united with Great Britain. And I think that's the kind of partnership that the Prime Minister will have to continue to work with.